For a whole host of reasons, these pieces of concept art or early draft ideas were ultimately given a hard no in the end. But that still won't stop this Padawan from gushing over the brilliant Star Wars plans and suggestions that unfortunately never made it past the pitching stage. I'm Gareth from What Culture Star Wars, and here are 10 awesome Star Wars ideas that nearly happened. Number 10. Anakin Skywalker really embraces the dark side at the Jedi Temple. Anakin Skywalker's butchering of a room full of younglings within the Jedi Temple acted as one of the darkest beats the entire Skywalker saga had produced. However, according to Emperor Palpatine actor Ian McDiarmid at Salt Lake City's FanX convention in 2015, the originally fully shot scene was said to be much more gruesome, revealing that a lot of young potential Jedi ended up on the cutting room floor. And though the actor would admit cutting down the carnage was probably for the best in order to avoid a harsher rating for Revenge of the Sith, he did recall a conversation with George Lucas over the vivid slaughtering of the youngsters where the director explained, "That's what he's like, this guy. He's uncompromising. People should know it." Though it was clearly a wise move steering clear of too graphic a massacre scene for the sake of a PG-13 rating, seeing an uncompromising Anakin display just how far he'd fallen in such a disturbing manner would have likely made for a much more chilling closing stretch to the prequels and his long-awaited transformation into Darth Vader. Number 9. Chewbacca is interrogated by Kylo Ren. While many of the concepts and plans occupying this list unfortunately never made it past the discussion over a coffee stage, Kylo Ren's intense interrogation of everyone's favourite Wookiee was actually fully shot for use in a live-action feature. However, acting as yet another Skywalker saga editing casualty, Ren's torturing of Chewbacca in what would eventually become The Rise of Skywalker was likely deemed too dark for the PG-13 ninth entry, according to Chewie actor Juna Suotamo. As the towering thespian would note in his book Raw, My Life as a Wookiee, scene partner Adam Driver went all in on the scene, psyching himself up to be a real monster through it all. Ultimately, the safer decision to simply have Chewie be captured before eventually being rescued by Finn and Poe was opted for instead, depriving fans of a beat that, while admittedly unsettling, could have added some much-needed edge to an otherwise bland greatest hits compilation. Number 8. Darth Maul is a big part of the Kenobi series. The impending arrival of the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus series was always destined to set the internet ablaze. And while the hype is very much real when it pertains to the episodic story, which is set to involve the return of Hayden Christensen's Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker, and Kenobi watching over young Luke some 10 years on from Revenge of the Sith, the announcement of a certain character being stripped from the show has left more than a few pondering over what could have been, even before the series has dropped. As reported by The Hollywood Reporter, Darth Maul actor Ray Park was said to have been in the midst of preparing for a comeback in the show as the red-faced antagonist. However, his scenes were said to have been binned off during a creative overhaul that saw Vader being pumped into the action instead. Seeing Vader once again clash with his old mentor will undoubtedly make for can't-miss TV, but few would have complained about the prospect of finally hearing KENOBI bellow from the former Sith Lord on the live-action stage either. Number 7. Han Solo's dramatic death goes down much earlier. As far as epic fatalities in the galaxy far, far away go, Han Solo's dramatic death in The Force Awakens definitely ticked all the boxes necessary to leave audiences with their jaws banging off the floor. Harrison Ford finally had the gravitas-imbuing conclusion he'd been angling for since 1983. In all honesty though, perhaps it wouldn't have been the worst idea in the world to have given the grisly actor his wish a few decades earlier in the midst of Return of the Jedi. Had Solo sacrificed himself for a high ideal, as Ford put it when discussing the proposed death on Conan, that third original trilogy entry would have undoubtedly come equipped with much more dramatic weight and stakes, making for a far more meaningful and perhaps even bittersweet victory over the Empire in the end. George Lucas and the gang clearly didn't see much value in shooting down this smuggler-turned-general way back when, however, and not even a blade through the chest some 3 decades on could keep Solo off our screens when all was said and done. Just let the man rest. Number 6. The Wookiees versus the Empire. Chewbacca and his fellow Wookiees doing their bit in fighting off the Separatists made for some of the most explosive and eye-catching set pieces the prequels had to offer. This was far from an idea just thrown into the mix for the sake of it, however, as George Lucas had actually been mulling over an all-out skirmish involving Chewie's species since the days of drafting up the story for A New Hope. After deciding to push back the primitive Wookiee vs. Empire war to the last film in his original trilogy though, it soon became clear that the furry species wouldn't have fit the proposed battle due to being much more technologically savvy than initially imagined. This and the fact that creating a battle involving hundreds of Wookiees was seen as too expensive a choice at the time, led to the Ewoks being swapped in for Return of the Jedi's climax. Yet while it would have understandably come at quite a cost, there's no questioning the fact that a raging Wookiee war with the cheaply kitted out stormtroopers would have made for a much more compelling battle for the galaxy. Number 5. Padmé wanted to assassinate Anakin. Very few thespians came out of the prequel series smelling like roses, through no fault of their own, I might add. All of the acting chops in the world could not save some of the most talented actors in the galaxy from dialogue and exchanges designed by an otherwise genius creator who couldn't seem to grasp how actual humans conversed. But in the case of Padmé Amidala performer Natalie Portman, the actor was very nearly gifted a development that would have at least resembled a compelling and realistic act. According to artist Ian McCaig's concept art for Revenge of the Sith, Padmé would have been driven to pulling a knife on her beloved when confronting him on Mustafar. Despite this, Padmé still wouldn't have been able to do the necessary deed though, with McCaig noting she loves him too much to stop him, even when he's become the monster. What could have been a much-needed emotionally complex layer to Revenge of the Sith's last act was instead swapped out in favor of the former Queen of Naboo begging Anakin to come back to the light before losing her will to live post-childbirth. Number 4. Revenge of the Sith's Lost Monsters. Keeping with Revenge of the Sith's Lost Mustafar moments now, and to a showdown for the ages that could have likely been ramped up a few more dramatic notches. Brought into being by artist Sang Jun Lee, a red lightsaber-wielding Anakin Skywalker could be seen duking it out with old master-turned-enemy Obi-Wan Kenobi amidst the fiery terrain. Only instead of merely having the lava and crumbling mining facility to worry about, they would have been joined by a monumental alien-scorpion-lizard hybrid. You could understandably debate that cutting this grand beast from the dynamic duel led to a much more personal and appropriately emotional clash between the leading characters. But this Mustafar monster's inclusion in the sword fight would have likely been a welcome addition of peril, without taking too much away from the Vader Kenobi back and forth. Number 3. Luke's hand kickstarts the sequels. One of the major plot holes coming out of J.J. Abrams' reviving of the Skywalker saga with The Force Awakens centered around exactly how the wise pirate queen Maz Kanata got her hands on the most sacred lightsaber in the galaxy. Instead of spending a little extra screen time on what the blade had been up to in the time between being attached to a severed Luke Skywalker's hand in The Empire Strikes Back, Abrams simply moved on with the action with his fingers in his ears. Originally, however, the film's since-deleted opening sequence would have actually provided fans with the missing pieces of the weapon's journey, with Skywalker's chopped mitt floating through space before burning to a crisp upon entering the stratosphere of an unnamed planet, according to a Mark Hamill fact-check on Twitter. It may have made for a bit of a grisly opening shot after a decade away from the big screen Star Wars live action, but it would have at least explained in a rather graphic way how Kanata potentially obtained the blue saber. Number 2. Luke Skywalker becomes the next Darth Vader. Flirting with the murkier side of the Force in his later appearances as a grizzled, bitter Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, you may be surprised to discover that this wasn't the first time a pitch had been made for the one-time farm boy to take a walk on the more questionable side of morality. After dispatching the Emperor to save his boy, the few beats between Darth Vader and his son as the former Anakin Skywalker slowly passed on made for one of Return of the Jedi's most moving exchanges. However, George Lucas once actually jokingly pitched this sequence having a very different conclusion. As he told his co-writer Lawrence Kasdan when discussing the scene, Luke takes his mask off, the mask is the very last thing, and then Luke puts it on and says, "Now I am Vader, surprise! The ultimate twist! Now I will go and kill the rebel fleet and I will rule the universe." Gleefully, Kasdan actually responded by proclaiming, "That's what I think should happen," before Lucas quickly backed off and noted how the film was for kids. Number 1. Count Dooku and Darth Maul were nearly women. The fact fans were never truly treated to the sight of a Asajj Ventress committed to live action still sits as a bitter pill to swallow for many, and it wasn't as though the concept of a female Sith was outside the realms of possibility either, with both Count Dooku and Darth Maul once being pitched as being introduced as women in their respective emergencies onto the Skywalker saga scene. Once again being forged in the mind of gifted artist Ian McCaig, the designer originally conceived Maul as a pale, redlock-sporting menace of a woman with metal teeth. Too frightened by the design himself, Lucas was said to have passed up on the tin-teeth villainess, asking McCaig to design his second worst nightmare instead. In the case of Dooku, his female alternative very much formed the basis of what would eventually become Ventress, with Countess Dooku being shelved the minute Christopher Lee became available. What a damn shame. And that's our collection of awesome Star Wars moments that nearly happened. Any we missed, then let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, if you like this kind of thing, then head on over to whatculture.com and find some more awesome articles just like the one this video is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Star Wars. Thank you as always for clicking on this video today. May the Force be with you, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye bye.